Oxy? What about the UA? What about Oxy? What about the UA?
The UA are a traditional tribe living in the cloud forest in the Andes on the edge of the Amazon basin in Colombia. They are a traditional group of about 5,000 people who have lived in harmony with their environment for thousands of years.
They're a very peaceful people. They've lived for 400 years pretty much unhindered, including, numerous attempts by Spanish conquistadors to conquer the area. They don't even have a written language. Their history is passed down from father to son through tales, and they have maintained their culture and very little contact with the outside world, and that is until Occidental Petroleum decided to drill on their land.
The UA live in an area that's been discovered to have over 1 billion barrels of oil, and over the last decade they've been resisting oil development on their sacred ancestral lands.
Sin tierra no nos podemos llamar, que solo cultura no nos podemos hablar.
In the early 90s, the Colombian government leased out this area to Occidental Petroleum in partnership with a Colombian oil company called Ecopetrol. Together, the oil venture plans to explore for oil and actually produce up to 1 billion barrels of oil.
If an oil company came to your house and said, you know what, there's oil there underneath your house and we're just going to drill for it, and without even telling you, just showed up with tractors and equipment, you'd be pretty upset about that.
No vamos a salir de aquí porque estamos en nuestra casa.
Oil is a huge part of Colombia's economy. They depend on oil exports, of which half of all their exports ends up in the United States. Their hope for economic recovery is all being placed in oil, and that is very short-sighted.
El petróleo es la sangre de la tierra. Que si nosotros sacamos todo eso, la tierra queda muerta. Llegaremos al fin del mundo.
The government of Colombia sent in somewhere around 3,000 Colombian troops to the area to escort about 80 truckloads of equipment for Oxy's final drilling rig to be moved into the site.
They had no right to drill there, obviously, but they decided that they were going to do so anyhow, without even consulting the UA, which made them obviously very upset.
Throughout Colombia, oil developments brought violence, and what we've seen since the Oxy project started in the UA territories, we've seen violence has arrived there in much of an escalated fashion. In the last 12 or 13 years that the Oxy's main pipeline, Caño Limón, has been in operation in Colombia, the guerrillas have bombed it on the average every 8 days. And, something like 8 times the size of the Exxon Valdez spills, oil has been spilled into the Colombian rivers and ecosystems.
For months this year, they have been literally barricading a road that Oxy would like to drive its drilling rigs up and start to suck the blood of their mother. They blockaded that road in January, they held it till March, then the stormtroopers came in, the same troops that the US government has just funded again with another $1 billion worth of our taxpayers' money.
And basically they've been evicted through military action, they've been tear gassed. In the violent conflicts that have ensued, there's been 3 UA children, 3 indigenous children, including 1 UA child, drowned. There's been several who were missing and seriously injured.
A ellos no les importó que hubieran niños ni mujeres embarazadas, ni les importó nada, sino les importó fue sacarnos a la fuerza y desalojar. Y en estos momentos no sabemos si cuántos niños se habrán ahogado o dónde estarán. Estamos perdidos de ellos.
3 Americans, including our close friend and ally, Terrence Freitas, Laje Nagay, and Ingrid Washington Watak, were murdered by the FARC guerrillas when they were coming out of the UA territory in March of 1999.
In this country, if 3 children were killed by military police, there'd be a congressional inquiry, And yet, for some reason, because this is Colombia, and because this is an oil company that is financed by large American interests, that grants them the right to be indemnified where the killing of innocent people is concerned.
When the violence happened, we continued to pressure Fidelity Investments, who are the biggest shareholders in Occidental Petroleum, and Vice President Al Gore, whose father sat on the Occidental Petroleum Board of Directors for 28 years, and whose family owns close to $1 million in Occidental shares. Now, Gore can deny all he wants, whether or not it's his shares or his mother's shares. The fact remains that his family benefits from this project, and what we've seen has been very disappointing. What we've seen is complete and utter silence on his part on the UWA issue. He's refused to meet with the UWA, he's refused to issue any kind of supportive statements in support of the UWA, and he's refused to make any kind of intervention in slowing down the tensions or easing up the tensions on this issue.
I say he stands on an oil platform, not an environmental one. I mean, the man stands to gain from this particular drill site. His shares will go up. He knows how much they will be worth once oil has, being drilled on UWA sacred land. He knows this, and yet he chooses to ignore the issue. This was the environmental leader, don't forget. This was the man who wrote the book on how to protect the environment. This is the man who said, who quoted Gandhi, who said, "Be the change you wish to see." And I saw that on the campaign trail, and I thought, that's a dichotomy that you just, I mean, it blew me away. How can you own a million shares in an oil company that's uprooting an indigenous culture that is possibly going to displace this culture and send it the way of so many others, only to be visible on the pages of a book or on a microchip?
The message we are sending to corporate America is, there are some projects that have such high social, environmental, and political cost that really they're not worth it, no matter what the traditional balance sheet says.
It's so ironic that these people worship the land. And here they are being punished for it.
In the UWA have lost a tremendous amount in the battle to fight for this area, for the land, and for their culture. They've been beaten down, spiritually, having to face the military and constantly face the companies in the military and the war and the guerrillas and the violence. It's really been demoralizing on the one hand. On the other hand, they've prepared to die to defend the area, and I think they've strengthened their resolve in making a statement that, not just for themselves and for their land, but for all of humanity, that the earth must be defended. There are sacred places that must be defended, even if, the people who defend it end up losing or dying as a race. And I think that they're making the ultimate statement of saying that they're willing to lose all that they value, which is their life, their culture, and their tradition, in order to defend this place. And I think we need to hear that.
I want to read to you what an UWA leader said back in the early 1600s, when the tribe was faced with enslavement from the conquistadores, the Spanish conquistadores. He said that the very purpose of life for the UWA was conservation, that their role in this world was to maintain the equilibrium of the parallel worlds of the sky and the earth, and that if the UWA were enslaved, they would not be able to fulfill this purpose.